Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel here. Today we got another kind of similar kind of just chatting video, I guess you could say, like we've been doing for the past few videos here. Obviously, the subject of this one you can tell is Battlefield. We've been doing kind of videos on a lot of the big, shooter franchises recently, whether it be COD, Halo, Fortnite, stuff like that. Kind of just analyzing the state that they're in and kind of just, seeing I guess you could say what the current situation is for all of them at the moment. And I don't know what I'm going to call this video yet, but it may or may not allude to the fact that Battlefield is in a very bad state. But if it doesn't, Battlefield is in a very bad state here. It's not exactly a secret or a well-guarded secret at this point. Battlefield used to be a part of what I consider the big three of the FPS franchises with Battlefield, Halo, and COD. Probably not in reverse order, if anything, probably, but it used to be in the big three regardless, and now it is seemingly had one of the not only quickest, I guess, but one of the most dramatic falls from grace and falls off or falling off a cliff that I've ever seen really in my life. Really after Battlefield 1 here, which you can see I have some videos pulled up and some Steam chart stuff pulled up here. This is their newest game, by the way. If you're not very familiar with Battlefield or the current state is, I don't blame you. Not a lot of people are following it right now for good reason. Battlefield 2042 is their most recent game, and it's currently the third most played game, at least on Steam, of course, but it still gives you a pretty good idea of the overall trend of these games and what's being played. And Battlefield 1 right now, just barely over 10,000 players at the moment, is their most played game by a fairly wide margin here. Even compared to Battlefield 5, a newer video game in their franchise. That is not a good thing. Obviously, you could say Battlefield, it's a testament to how, how, future-proofed or how good of a game Battlefield 1 is, which is true. Battlefield 1 is a fantastic video game. It is, in my opinion, when you're talking about World War One shooters, probably the cream of the crop. I don't know anything that really supplants it in that kind of niche in my mind, but that's not really a good thing for Battlefield to have your, third game on the back burner there be by far your most played game and your most well liked game. Battlefield 5 was the game that released directly after it, as you can see, didn't do as well. Then you have Battlefield 2042, which really didn't do as well, and we'll get into that in a second here, why I think that is. Then you have Battlefield 4 and 3. Not as you can see, 3 great game, but not many people play it anymore because why would you do that when you can play 4 1? 4 is still somewhat played. 4, a tremendous game, just obviously very old at this point. And if you go to even just, some of the Steam pages for this, we'll go to in a second. But let's just kind of go in order here. Both Battlefield 5 and then Battlefield 2042 as to what the fuck happened and everything. Because it really is like, we've talked about COD and Halo and stuff and how they've kind of gradually declined, almost like a stock chart or something. This, the Battlefield series, when you analyze it like that, is almost like a rug pull. It's just like, oh, it just plummets. I think there's a few reasons for that we'll get into, very momentarily here. But it's just, I mean, Battlefield, it just fell off a cliff after Battlefield 1 and with Battlefield 5's release, and then, after that, of course. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I want to talk about Battlefield 5 first. One of my buddies said this in the Battlefield series as a whole is Battlefield 5 built Battlefield's coffin, and 2042 put the nails in it. Obviously, there's been a new game kind of teased for Battlefield 6 or whatever they end up calling it, but it's in a very sorry state. And I don't think I have. Hopefully, I don't have the audio going for this. I just want to kind of go in here to kind of okay. I want to freeze frame on the problem here the best I can. What is the best frame to freeze on to show the problem? The problem has been right here. Okay. Not somebody getting shot, of course, but the problem here is Battlefield 5. When you talk about Battlefield 5, you have to remember this isn't a terrible game. It's set in a good time period that is maybe a little oversaturated when it comes to shooter games, but it is an amazing time period that's tried and true in World War II. Great time period, a lot you can do with that. a lot of good stories you can tell. But I want to say the marketing for this game is one of the most atrocious marketing jobs I have ever seen in my life. It's almost like they were actively trying to kind of make a bad Battlefield or do a bad job when it comes to marketing in this game. You can see the Pacific trailer thing actually over there. Battlefield 5 got a little better. It wasn't a terrible game, gameplay was. But the marketing job was just tremendously like I wanted to say something, but it is horrible. I mean, if you're not aware of this and you don't already see the problem here, we're set in a World War II video game, and there is a woman in frontline combat. Not only is there a woman, which is already kind of, pushing the little wokeness line of like, why the fuck are you involving this in a video game, and why are you trying to make this statement? But a disabled, not like any mentally or anything, but has a prosthetic, or I guess on her left arm, maybe I'm the disabled one, but has a prosthetic, kind of claw arm or something on her left arm. So it's, a previously injured, prosthetic wielding woman frontline, like vanguard soldier, essentially. And it's just, it rubbed people kind of the wrong way. It's part of it is not knowing your audience with when you do something like this, but part of it is also just like they were clearly trying to make kind of a statement here for whatever fucking reason. Why, escapes me. But they're trying to make a statement here of like, oh, no, let's tell this, really social justice, like wokeness kind of progressive story here. And, World War II, it's one of those wars where, sure, you see examples of women serving, whether that's combat or not. There's limited examples of both, or there's limited examples of combat in World War II of women. I believe this is either an American or British soldier, which I'm not sure if at all they served in combat roles, especially combat roles like this, injured and prosthetic, in the British or the American army. From what I always just thought of Russian or maybe desperate German woman fighting, but that's about the extent of it. But regardless, they were clearly trying to make kind of this like progressive and like this kind of, feminist like statement here for some reason. And I don't think that really has a place in these video games. Not only is it not very historically accurate, um, especially on a broad scale when you're talking about World War II, it just rubs people the wrong way. It's not something people really necessarily wanted to see, not something really anybody cared about, especially the ones that played their game. Then on top of this, you have the fact that she's very clearly like a main participant. It's not just like a throwaway kind of like, oh, we'll throw some little Easter egg in here. And then you have somebody, I can't remember who it was, if it was the CEO or somebody high up in DICE on their Twitter account that responded to the backlash of this video, of this trailer actually. He's like, well, if you don't like it, then don't buy it. Like, a high up, I'm assuming executive at the very least in DICE or EA tells you not to buy their fucking video game. Whether you're trying to support what they're doing, I get the kind of somewhat the logic behind it, but telling people not to buy your video game over something they don't like, when I don't know, it just seemed like they were catering to an audience that wasn't going to be playing their game and wasn't going to be buying their game is the main thing there. It's kind of just it's weird. It gave them a ton of bad PR to the point where not a lot of people even gave this game a chance to begin with. And this is what makes this even worse is this is fresh off of I wonder what the comments are on this, but this is fresh off of Battlefield 1, one of their best games, if not their best game of all time, set in a World War One, the war before even too, very historically, well, somewhat historically accurate, of course, video games and everything, but doesn't try to, bring politics or some social movements into this at all. It doesn't try to do anything. It just makes a fucking amazing game. It's just, I mean, it is what it's supposed to be. Yeah, the most realistic part of this is the medic not helping the dying guy. Yeah, a black guy with a katana, half naked Viking looking guy. Yeah. So you see a pretty heavy theme of, this must have been a banger, right? So just going into the comments, hopefully there's nothing that's gonna, yeah. just going into the comments, you see the issue with this in the backlash. It's not historically accurate. It's trying to tell these stories that just aren't prevalent. It's trying to make like a movement. Again, you see the medic ignoring the guy who's, I mean, the comments in the video itself tells you really everything you need to know about this. It just pandered to the wrong people. It pandered to like, a very small percentage of the population that doesn't really play video games. It definitely isn't going to be playing this video game. It makes no sense who they were pandering this to, and the marketing just killed them, especially off all the good grace they've had from Battlefield 1. It's not the first time they've made a bad game or made a fuck up. A lot of people didn't really appreciate or like Battlefield Hardline, for example, but it was nowhere near this. They just took a swing at something and missed. This was a very deliberate message that they made that really shouldn't have been made in the first place. So I think that's what built the coffin. That's what started the fall off the cliff here. I think you're hanging on by your fingertips here, and then we get to this Battlefield. Maybe I'll close the step. You get to this Battlefield 2042. Ooh, it's got audio. Battlefield 2042. As you watch this trailer, you'll notice, it's not as statement making as the Battlefield 5 trailer. There's not a whole bunch of political or social movement statements being made. It's not necessarily pandering to a really bad audience or something, or an audience that's not, Euro audience. It's an okay statement. It tries to, it looks pretty cool. I can't remember where the timestamp is for it, but it harbors back to one of the most famous Battlefield clips with the, I think it's maybe right here, the residue, or however you say that. The guy when he jumps out of his airplane, shoots the other plane, and yeah, right here with an RPG, and then climbs back into it. It harbors back on that. It's actually a pretty cool trailer as far as the development. You can see it's a newer trailer, and it's got significantly more likes. Um, it's not bad. The comments aren't as inflammatory. So coming into this, it seemed like maybe at least on the bare minimum it wouldn't be as catastrophic for DICE for Battlefield 2042. But the problem more with this game and why it's so low on the player counts, even though it's the newest game and everything, and why nobody really played this, why it received bad reviews on really any store page or any review channel you'll see, is the gameplay. So it's kind of the opposite issue that Battlefield 5 had, where its marketing, this trailer and everything, and the build up to it was fine. At least it was better than 5, which again isn't saying much, but still, it was the gameplay. 2042, as we grind along in the years here, isn't too futuristic. Obviously, it's a somewhat futuristic, kind of modern-ish, futuristic-ish shooter. It was set in a weird time period. I didn't think that was really great. Doing a modern shooter, yes, they've done it before, but I wouldn't have minded another modern shooter, to be honest. The time period wasn't really the big killer for me. It was kind of the gameplay itself. Compared to a lot of other Battlefield games, it didn't feel like Battlefield. It didn't feel anything like a Battlefield 1 or anything. It felt very arcadey. It felt very gimmicky. It felt kind of like it was trying to take a lot of notes from a more arcadey shooter or like a COD, or implement all these new like trendy stuff that just wasn't Battlefield. It tried to make it into a COD or an arcadier shooter, and it really just didn't really hit the mark with it, as well as separated itself from the kind of bread and butter formula that Battlefield has been established with, which was a really big issue for them because obviously people play Battlefield for the Battlefield experience. People play Halo for the Halo experience. People play COD for the COD experience. Each one of these games has their own unique signature and feel and what they bring to the table. And people really don't appreciate trying to meld those too much because, do what you do best, play to your strong suit there. And that's just, it completely missed the mark on this. Another thing I think really kind of has bothered this series and bothered a lot of series recently is trying to be a little pushy with the microtransactions and stuff, which is something that even started in Battlefield 1 with fucking war bonds, I think, right? Or whatever that system was. It's been a while now, but that kind of, when you go back to Battlefield 4, when you go back to Battlefield 3, great games, Battlefield 2, they weren't shoving microtransactions down your throat. It wasn't like a big prevalent thing in the game. It wasn't like some, store page or anything like you get with these new modern Battlefields. I think that's always kind of a touch of death for games, especially if they didn't originally already have some sort of store or auction house or whatever. I didn't really appreciate that. Again, I'll die on that hill that, even if it's a cosmetic thing, it's not like a pay to win thing. I don't like having microtransactions shoved down my throat. I don't think it looks cool. I don't think it's very historically accurate if you're doing a timepiece like Battlefield often does. It's not my cup of tea, and I don't really appreciate it or like that in the games a lot of time. And I think that's why you're seeing this decline. I think this why it's not as prevalent as COD anymore. And I mean, I think it's in a similar situation right now that Halo is in, where it's really in a coffin and it's been nailed shut. Battlefield 6 is on the horizon. They did a little teaser trailer that looked okay from the offset there. It didn't look anything bad. Nothing too much to complain about with that. But if they don't hit this shit out of the park with Battlefield 6 or whatever they end up calling it, it is going to be a problem. This is their last attempt, in my opinion, anyways, at really, trying to revive at this point this series. They're doing chest compressions, and this is the last, fucking thrust into your chest or whatever. And it's going to be a problem if this goes wrong. I don't like they have to knock this out of the park to revive this series because right now Battlefield is kind of dead. No one's really talking about it unless you're a guy who enjoys playing, a game from what 2016 ballpark or something in Battlefield 1, which is a great game, but still. So yeah, that's kind of my analysis of Battlefield and where it's at right now. I don't think it's in a good state. I think this entire series rests on their next Battlefield and Battlefield 6, and I don't like the odds of it rolling, the skill check of plus 20 or whatever the fuck. It's not something I have a lot of confidence in, and I'm kind of frustrated and concerned, to say the least, about the prospects of this game. But yeah, that's all I have really. I'd love to hear your opinions on the Battlefield franchise in the comments down below. As always, thank you for viewing, and if you enjoyed this video and this channel, always encourage you to like and subscribe. It really helps out. But yeah, peace.